we're live on the other platforms, but YouTube's still waiting the chats in there. But as we're getting into this, you can figure that out. So it was an interesting journey on YouTube and content creation in general. We are live now. We're live. Welcome to the chat, everybody. We were just a little tardy on this platform. We're going out to all the other platforms. I don't know if you want to start that.
Yeah, technical difficulties there. I hit go on YouTube. Took an extra second, but we all know Clyde do something, and I asked him about his. He just hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube not too long ago, and I asked him about initial experience with starting to cover the news. Some digging on his channel back when the trucker convoy started, and it looks like that was when you first started to do news content.
Yes. On my channel. That's correct. Just want to weigh this in though. You're not like this bad technical guy, because I wrapped you up for about 30 minutes before we did our record session, just so the record's straight. I flubbed this too, so we're both on the same page here.
It happens.
Anyway, boomers, two boomers on YouTube.
It happens.
Anyway,
we're here. We made it work. It's working.
We made it
guys.
work. So what happened with that was I did content in a few other locations. Clyde Do Something wasn't my first channel. I was on another channel called Paps Boys Roadhouse, and it was like a DIY parody channel, and it was fun, and it lasted a while. It made up to like 32,000 subscribers, which was decent, and it led to like some other like fun world experiences where BBC actually had me come on a television broadcast for a pilot show, and then ended up a real show. And that was fun, and it was, and then it was canceled immediately because whatever, it sucked. And I was on the History Network for some other clip, and that was fun. It was all a lot of fun, but it was all just entertainment stuff and not talking about the news. And then when I started what is now Clyde Do Something, it was actually called Clyde's Soapbox, and it was like a new thing for just me to do content creation. However, I felt like doing at the time. It was a lot of vlogs, a lot of just like DIY stuff, tips on how to do little tradesman tricks, stuff like that. And then I actually got pulled over by some other content creators to talk about U.S. politics for a while. And I jumped around on other people's channels talking about this on live streams and whatnot. It was like when YouTube's advent of live streaming content came out. And I jumped around and I got a little taste for talking about politics, a Canadian talking about American politics, which most of us normally did. And I think we got into this in our chat earlier today, and didn't get to really focus much on Canadian issues, even though like that's where I live and this is the heart of everything that matters to me. Of course, U.S. politics kind of bleeds into our realm, but at the same time, it's like I never really had an avenue for talking about that. And so I was doing some other content, and that kind of fell through. You have partnerships, and those don't end up working out. And I found myself free agent again, and I was almost about to quit doing content entirely. I was at a point, it left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, having worked with people, and then it doesn't work out, and then it's all creative stuff. Creative people are really hard to work with. It's true, and I'm probably just as hard to work with as everybody else. But the convoy.
I was gonna say it takes a lot more out of you than just a regular job too. It really is not just like a clock in, clock out. It's a lot of like your heart and soul that you have to put behind the scenes that a lot of people surface. But anyway, continue.
So the funny story about that is the last project I was working on was I got involved with a guy who wanted to do video game streaming, and I'm not super into video games, but I like the creative aspect of building a stream and being a producer. So I was doing that, and it was marginally successful. It wasn't great, but during that process, I found myself doing a lot of the back end stuff, and it became a meme within the community of people telling me in the chat, or telling us both, "Hey, Clyde, do something." And and so that was sort of the joke, is like, Clyde, you never doing anything, except I was like pulling all the weight, and it was a funny meme, and it became part of that. And then when that endeavor ended and we discontinued making that project, I went back to YouTube and I wanted to rebrand and just like call it Clyde or something, right? And there was another guy who had a channel called Clyde with a lot of subscribers, and he talked about anime. And I'm like, Japanese wife, guy talks about anime. I know people confuse the both of us, and so I was like, okay, I'll just make up a name for now. I'll change it later. And I wrote in the meme, the Clyde do something as the channel name. And I thought I'll just change it like before anything takes off and before I ever do anything. And then the Freedom Convoy happened. And I was so enthralled with what was happening there that I said, I have to weigh in on this. There's no way I can't. I have to say something, and I have to tell people about it. I know how it works with the internet. If you take what you understand about what's going on and you put it out there, the more you put it out there, the more the story gets, passed out there, the more it gets reach. If only a few voices are saying everything, then it's easy to squash it. So I was like, well, I'll just be one of the many, many voices that are talking about it right now, and I'll just get that message out there as much as I possibly can. I'll do as many videos in the morning before I go to work, just talking about the things that matter to me, and get it out there. I didn't expect it to take off like it did. I really didn't.
And what was your experience talking about Canadian politics before the trucker convoy? Because was this kind of your first foray into talking about that? And was there any fear around that? Because let's face it, there kind of is a culture of, well, you're not allowed to have that opinion. Don't have that opinion here in Canada. Don't speak out. Don't ruffle the feathers.
Yeah. So, oh man, I've always been a cheeky sort of black sheep, like even within my family. I just tell it the way it is, and I don't, it gets me in a lot of trouble. Like it really does. I just don't I can't lie. Like I can't look at a thing and say that it isn't the thing that I see. Right. So I got to call a spade. And, Canadian politics has been tricky. It's really easy to criticize the Americans, I find, for a lot of people, because you could just it's that external thing that you can talk about. Hey, those guys, they're doing that thing over there, and I disagree with that. But then you just ignore the same crap happening right in your own backyard.
Yeah.
And I couldn't shut up about it. I had to say something. And as much as like being afraid to say it, I mean, at first I actually gave my boss the heads up. I said at my auto garage, I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about giving my public opinion about politics in Canada on the internet. What do you think of that? And he's like, whatever, do you? I don't care. I said, well, there could be repercussions. Like people might get mad and find out where I work and where I live and call the shop and threaten and leave bad Yelp ratings or whatever. And he said, you know who answers the phone? Forget it. Go for it, dude. Whatever you want, do it. It's you. I'm not going to stop you. That was great. I just went full bore.
Mm-hmm. And that's great to have that support, because there really is this sort of this cancel culture, especially over the past few years, where people might not be as lucky in terms of letting people have their own voice, which is crazy to say, because this is supposed to be like a free country, I thought, where you can.
Yeah, I thought the liberal ideal was free speech and open society and all of that stuff. But it turns out people who purport to be liberals are not the liberals. Everything's backwards these days. It's crazy, and you have to point it out, though. You have to, because people will get wrapped up in the sophistry tricks of the linguistics game, and you end up there is serious gaslighting. You think, well, they're the liberals, they should be the people that enjoy freedom, and that's, but everything's Orwellian and backwards. Words don't mean what you think they mean.
The liberals are now the authoritarians, don't you know? Yeah, that's how this works. Yeah.
The new Democrats want to limit the ideas of democracy. The conservatives are progressives, and they don't really care about conserving anything, really.
Yeah, and let's go back to the trucker convoy. Because you were covering really important stories when it comes to the trucker convoy, the misinformation surrounding the convoy, and you weren't in Ottawa, but it looks like you were kind of scouring the internet and social media of getting like the facts and the truth of what was going on at the time. And I guess kind of two parts to the question. Number one, how did you kind of feel as a Canadian to see this movement happening? And then also, how did you feel as a Canadian to see how it was not being reported at all properly by our legacy?
I predicted it is what it was. I predicted it, and I knew in my gut that that's what was happening. And because I was kind of first on the scene, or one of the first on the scene to be reporting it in the way that I did, like there was so many people on the ground, and that was great, and it was fantastic, and people were tuning into it. But there wasn't a lot of people putting out like 10-minute videos talking about exactly what was going on. But we've seen this across many cultures, not just, like I said, I talked about US politics. That was a big thing. I watched this go down from the days that Ron Paul, I was a big fan of. He was running for the Republican nomination to run for president, and they crushed him. They crushed him in the media, and it wasn't because his ideas were bad. And this is the whole thing. And I've always believed in, if bad ideas exist, give them the time of day so they can bury themselves, right? Because bad ideas will just get crushed by sunlight and people realizing that they're terrible, and you ridicule everything, right? But no, this guy, he had great ideas, and people bought into him, and they liked these ideas. But then they were, gaslit, and the media came after him and said, "Oh, he's the big R word," and all that stuff, which was unsubstantiated. And they tried every trick in the book to take this guy out, who was just really, at the end of the day, a liberty-oriented, hard money guy. Whether that was like what you think the leadership should be going for is a valid argument. You know what I mean? You could argue for or against it. But what they did was they didn't argue for or against the thing. They demonized the guy in the public eye, and then they pushed all of his followers to the fringes of society, or made them appear that way or whatever. And then people ostracized them. And I saw this as like, holy cow, we're doing it now in Canada. We've been doing this American thing. We get these accusations from the left all the time that the right is bringing American style politics. That's not the case. It's the media machine that's bringing the American style politics to us. And they're doing it by not allowing people to have open discussions and decide for themselves what ideas are good and what direction we should go with our country, but force feeding you BS. That's what it is. It's BS. And they want to gaslight people, and again push people into the margins of society so they'll be ostracized by their peers for daring to speak out against the orthodoxy. And that's what I really want to showcase. I really want to show people, without having to say all those words, that that's what's going on here.
Yeah. And that's really scary when you can't even question it anymore. Like that is really the really horrifying thing of how far, sure, we have freedoms in Canada, but it's like there's almost like so much social pressure. They've created this sort of like weird culture of social pressure and social acceptability. And to be honest, like it might go further back than we even realize in terms of Canadian culture and like how long that's been the case. But to focus on the convoy once again, what would you say was the most egregious or maybe overlooked story that you reported on? Because I know there was a lot of different kind of good videos you had that were talking about things that weren't being talked about. Is there one out of all of them, one video out of all of them, that you think is the most important or overlooked by like the Canadian public as a whole, that like want them to know about the convoy? Like the biggest lie of the convoy, or the biggest overlooked item? Because I know there's a lot. I know there's a lot to
There's
pick
too many
from.
to mention. Holy cow! I mean, there's a bunch coming to mind immediately. There was these guys. I think they were called Seek for Truth, but it's spelled like Sikh, like the Indian Sikh guys.
Yep.
And the media just ignored them because it didn't follow the narrative, and there were a bunch of Sikh Canadians that were all for what was going on at the convoy, but they the media labeled them racists and all these other things. There was also the stories that came from Polish immigrants. Like, you'll never see the story about the Polish churches that got together and all these ladies came out in big vans with Polish, like, fresh hot Polish sausages and buns and all this stuff just to feed everybody, because they're like, well, if we can't donate, we'll give however we can. We'll drive down there and do that. And just like the mass of just kindness and humanity and everything that people believes what Canada once was and was great for exists
there.
And
all there.
It was there. It was all there, and it was being painted as this other thing that it wasn't. And I think that's the most important thing to know about what went down at the convoy versus what story was told about it. And I'll do what I can to scream it from the hilltops, you know what I mean? Let everybody know that's what actually went down.
Yeah.
But just the opposite, the absolute opposite of the concept of, the R word, right? Everybody's a this. No, it was people from different religions, different creeds, different colors, different everything. The thing that we're all told that is supposed to make Canada so great, that people came from all over the world to Canada as a bastion of freedom to get away from oppressive places. The government itself has become this oppressive thing, but the people are still dying to breathe free, and that's what they did for those 3 weeks.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I, along with many other Canadians, are so grateful that you were there to tell the story. I was saying before we put the cameras on, I was like really complimenting Clyde. Like, this is exactly what we need. The content that you create is exactly what we need. You sift through the research, you sift through the facts, the stories, the different clips, and you read between the lines of the legacy media, and you stitch it together into a concise video to tell people what's going on in about 10 minutes. And you're doing a service for the country.
It's so easy to let people stroke your ego, right? But I get people that criticize me because I'm not writing the articles. I'm not a journalist. I'm not getting out on the street, and there's a lot of criticism, and I think it's granted to an extent. People say you're not really doing much. Like Clyde just says something into a microphone.
Clyde did nothing. Clyde did nothing, right? He didn't do anything.
Yeah. I do. I get that. I get that criticism, and some of it's warranted, I guess, to an extent. But I think with the service that I do is I actually just I bring things together, like you said, and I'll make a story, not a narrative, but I'll let people know a story that's happening at any given time, and put it out there, because the amount of effort that's going into squashing these stories and making sure that this is not part of the narrative is great, and I'm just I'm a cog in the wheel fighting against that machine, you know what I mean? And I'll do what I can. And I'm glad people are receptive to it. I really am.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I kind of want to like parallel what both of us went through during the convoy. I was never thought of myself really as a reporter or a journalist, but I started to do the interviews and live streams on the ground. And during the final days of the convoy, a friend of mine sent my live stream link to my parents. And to give you an idea, my parents were not happy about this convoy. And they weren't happy about their son being there. Like, my dad actually hung up on me on the phone at one point because he was like, ranting about Windsor and what they were doing at Windsor, and it's ruining our economy. And I'm like, ruining our economy? How about the past couple of years? Anyway,
I grew up in Windsor, just for the record, and all my friends were for it. And they work for the big three. They work on the floor. They're not the union reps. They're not the union guys that work hand in hand with the politicians and the big business. They're just the plebs on the floor of the assembly line, and they were all for the convoy.
But Clyde, CTV News told me that the majority of Canadians were against the
Yeah. Nanos doing their job.
Yeah.
Right.
But But somebody sent this live stream link to my parents the final days of the convoy. And my parents just wanted to make sure I was all right not being arrested. But when they saw me interviewing regular people who had just lost their jobs, or like, people from all different backgrounds, they got red pilled, and they're like, "Oh my God, CTV is fake news."
Oh,
and,
good.
Oh,
glad
yeah.
to hear that.
And the thing is, getting red pilled is just the beginning. You start to question your reality. And again, I don't want to gush over you too much in front of everyone here, but it's so important because as on my parents' journey to being red pilled, they're YouTube algorithm. They're starting to watch more news on YouTube. And with your consistency is key. If your consistent news videos, you have given them a place to go from the legacy media prison. You're helping create this kind of new destination for people to go. And I think that is so important, because if we don't have, something that tethers us to reality where we can regularly get our news and our sort of connection to what's happening in our country, then these people are kind of lost. People get lost and they don't know what to believe, or maybe they're just on, on their conservative Twitter feed. But it's great to have someone like yourself, doing this service, and you're being modest, and I appreciate that. But you have earned 100,000 subscribers for a reason. I think well earned.
Thank you.
And yeah, just another congratulations. Do you want to talk about electric vehicles?
Oh, I'm happy to talk about electric vehicles,
because
I'm absolutely. Let me hit that point that you made though. Before.
Sure.
My parents are my dad's a huge fan of what I do, and so my parents have always been on board with the freedom message and that whole thing, and the idea of the government overreaching being the worst thing possible in our society. So like I've been fortunate with that. My parents were the ones that taught me to question everything, right? And sometimes that was trouble for me growing up, because I questioned them a lot. but they're thankful at the end of the day that that's what I did, and here I am making these videos and putting it out there. But like I said, anybody could do what I do. It's just about putting in the legwork. And to your talking about journalism, it kind of dawned on me. It's funny because what I do, I didn't really consider journalism, and then I thought about it. I was like, well, to pursue the stories that I wanted to tell people, I started having to make phone calls and cold call people and send emails and actually like get people to respond to things and interview people and bring people on the channel and let them speak their mind for themselves, and then let the people decide on what they see in that whole thing. And if that's not journalism, I don't know what to say. Like, what I was doing was just trying to give people information, and it turned out that I was doing more of a journalistic job than what the journalists are doing for the mainstream media outlets. I think it really goes to show what they're doing is because they're only taking the talking points from one direction is propagandistic. But at the same time, you have to be very careful when you're doing this stuff, because it's so easy for the sake of like getting views and all this stuff to just really sensationalize stuff. I do it sometimes with the thumbnails, and I'll be like, but I'll try to keep it on point, try to like reel it back a bit, because it really is easy to sensationalize things just for the sake of the attention. So just keep all that stuff in mind moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's good, because it is a lot of responsibility, right? Like, people do trust you with this a sort of accurate reflection of what's happening, and I would definitely make the argument that you do a better job than the legacy media. And to speak to the journalist,
by mistake, really. At the end of the day, it's like by mistake. I'm just trying to find out what's really going on, and that's journalism. That really what that is.
Yeah, and it speaks to how much the legacy media has failed when someone like you, an auto technician, dad of two, busy family man, you're the one having to do all the research and all the digging and all of the, fact checking. It's like, that's the job of the journalist. Like that, like the whole
really
news media institution is supposed to be doing that for us. But it turns out it's actually an auto technician on the West Coast that's going to be doing it for it.
I can't take all the credit for it. Like, the internet is such a great place for people to come together and share information. Now, I get a lot of info, a lot of tips, a lot of leads from a lot of people, and some of it, like, I sift through it. I'm like, oh my God, like you fell for that. Like, oh no, that's BS, man. Or, you know, there's a lot of stories, and you really have to work your way through it, because there's a lot of bad info out there, and it's really hard to discern what's good and what isn't. But like, I have a whole team of great people behind me, and a lot of people are just motivated to just see Canada be better. And that's, I mean, you couldn't pay a whole organization to do that. These people that talk to me all the time are so passionate about it, because this is their future. This is the future for their kids, and this is why they're messaging me about information as it comes to light. It's great.
Yeah, and that trust is important, right? Like, when people come to you, they trust that you know, share it with the world. That's an awesome thing.
Or even not share certain aspects of it. That's another thing, is when it would be so easy to just, you know, run with a story and out somebody for a thing that they don't want to be outed for. There are some stories that I just have not even told to the public, because there's details to it that would let information about that person know. And I'm hanging on to stories waiting for, you know, people to retire from their jobs and things like that. That's a hard one to just hang on to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's again, it speaks to the responsibility, right? Speaks to the responsibility.
And we can talk cars.
We can talk cars. And real quick, you know, you are an auto technician. You're somebody who's definitely into the tech behind media, for sure. I was actually watching one of your older videos, how much you're into keyboards.
Yeah,
I found that very interesting. But
yeah, okay, nice.
You know, but I don't want to get off
too much money.
I don't want to go off on keyboards, but I guess I do want to ask, just to kind of like put a bow on the conversation. Do you think of yourself differently now? Do you think of yourself like a journalist? Like, do you look at what you do differently?
I think it's really easy to get your ego wrapped up in everything that you do, and it's really easy to let that really take the reins and just roll with that. I struggle with that one all the time, and I always want to make sure that I keep my ego in check, because it really, at the end of the day, it's not about me. I just, you know, I have a channel and a voice, and I put this out, and I have, you know, just the motivation to make sure I keep putting videos out, and that's really what's doing it. But it's just really, it's too easy to get an ego, and I have to make sure that it's not about me. I really need to do that, because at the end of the day, YouTube, Google can just turn me off, and then I'm gone, and then you'll have to find me elsewhere. And I want to more than anything encourage more people to do what I'm doing, instead of be that guy. I don't want to be everybody's guy. I want to be a guy in a sea of guys that are doing the same thing. You know what I mean? And ladies, I'm not, you know, but
canceled. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. No, I want more people to have their voice out there, and I'd love to bring more voices on. So at the end of the day, it's not about me. It really isn't. It's about all of us, and it's about bringing Canada back together. That's what I really want to see. It's about a movement around the world to see the ideas of liberty and self-determination, self-reliance reigning as a more sought-after principle in life, rather than this security state that will take care of you until you're no longer useful to them.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I've actually thought of the idea of maybe creating content to coach others of how to make content and how to do the stuff that you or I do. But That's a whole other topic altogether. Let's talk about electric vehicles. I'm just going to turn my light on here in a second. But before you go into the negatives, you're a car guy. Are there positives? Are there any positives at all about electric vehicles in your opinion?
Yeah, there's lots actually. I have a lot of faith in electric cars. I think they're fantastic. It's a fantastic innovation. The biggest your white balance just went wing right over to the solar eclipse. Holy cow. And so I have a lot of faith in electric cars. I think they're great, but they have their limitations, and their limitations will not get us to the point that the government wants to take us. I think if you live in a fair weather place, I think the biggest innovation here is the way we can convert stored energy into motion, kinetic energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a huge innovation when it comes to the technologies with lithium, and then changing direct current into AC, so DC to AC. So I might get a little technical on this. And then with 3-phase brushless motors that are fantastic when it comes to efficiency. It's a long stretch from the old NiCad days to a DC motor in a car that was super inefficient and terrible. These are really efficient. We have, from how much stored energy that's in the battery, we can see up to in the 90s percentile that gets actually converted to motion, which is a long stretch from a gas engine, which is like 40% or sub 40%. Most is lost to heat, and diesel engines, which are just above 40%, which again is most of which is lost to heat. We see a much better efficiency in the use of energy. I mean, we're getting closer to seeing, we see a lot better use of the energy where that's stored. But that doesn't take us away from like some of the things that we're actually trying to do with it, or what we're being told that we're doing with it, and to i.e. the environmental thing. So, and I separate environmental from climate stuff. I think the climate alarmism stuff is just out to lunch. And I think that environmental is actually very much a worry that we should worry about. We shouldn't be damaging our environment. And you'll only see that people care about that when they're rich. And that's just a thing, right? Poor people in poor countries don't care. They're just going to beat the stones until the stuff comes out of the stones. And they don't care how dirty it gets, right? Until they're rich, and then they're like, "Oh, it looks like crap around here. Let's clean it up." But and this is a thing that's very helpful to selling people on the electric thing is, dumb people that think they're smart in cities don't see stuff coming out of a tailpipe. They think super clean. They don't see the lithium mines. They don't see the cobalt mines. They don't see how the energy is produced before it's stored. They don't even understand the concept of how energy is not even stored in a grid. Like, you store energy in your battery, but that's got a shelf life to it. But I mean, you can store it for a X amount of time. But when you're producing energy in the grand grid of things, the energy is either used or it's just it's gone. You've wasted it. So there's no capacitance in the system. Like, all the faith in what electric cars are going to do is a pipe dream. Now, that being said, they are good. So if you use them in the applications that work well for them, it's great. Will our grid be able to handle the storage capacity, or like the draw that people are going to want for pulling energy into these batteries at the rate that they want to introduce that? I don't think so. So there's going to be lots that'll have to be invested in the grid. Is that a public utility? Is that something that's a private business enterprise thing that should be seen or looked into? That's another story. I mean, there's so many aspects to this whole thing. And then at the end of the day, you could live in the prairies and you've done your conversion and it's January and it's -40 and the thing won't move.
Right.
It's just, you're not getting rid of the combustion engine. Sorry. It just like, it's the way the cookie crumbles when it comes to physics. Like, you can't will things into existence. It's just not possible.
So electric vehicles definitely have its utility. They're definitely useful, but this idea of replacing the combustion engine is just a pipe dream.
Yeah. So I mean, like, look at Japan, for example, or Europe. They used to run coal trains. Like, the trains used to run on coal, and then they were diesel, and then they switched to electric. It was just more efficient to have the trains run electric. It is more efficient, but it's an infrastructure issue. So you can't just always switch everything overnight to a new technology and then discount other technologies that may not come into play. So what we're talking about with the federal government is, by the year 2026, 20% of all new vehicles produced and sold in Canada, not produced, but sold in Canada, have to be, and I'll get to the point on why that's absurd, is they have to be electric, not zero emissions, not another alternative to whatever. No, electric is what they're putting forward. Then in 2030, 60% of all cars sold in Canada have to be electric. That's a thing. And then in 2035, 100% of cars have to be electric. Not hydrogen, not some other technology that may come out in the meantime, but electric.
It's crazy.
So it is crazy. It's a ludicrous plan. It's going to cause all kinds of damage to the economy. It's going to make me rich. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm going to do fantastic because people will be fixing their old cars because they can't buy new cars. Like, that's the thing. There's going to be a shortage on electric cars. We're not even going to be able to fill those quotas. So all it's going to do is it's going to create this huge shortage of new cars. That's it.
And do you foresee obscenely long lineups to get your car charged? Because I feel like, if this transition were to happen, then everyone's lining up to charge their cars. Like, is there going to be enough chargers? And just to kind of add to the point, like, I saw this tweet maybe 6 or 9 months ago. Stephen Guilbeault, I think it was, who's now he's the environmental minister or whatever. He tweeted out, "Hey, we finally have the infrastructure so you can drive a electric vehicle the entire way across the country." Like, this just happened, where they just got enough charging stations to drive an electric vehicle across the country. And I thought, this is almost like completing the railway and saying, okay, let's get rid of horse and buggy. We got the rail. We just got across the country with electric vehicles. We don't need the combustion engines anymore.
Call the horses. Call them all.
Yeah, get rid of the horses. We got the train tracks now. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do know exactly what you mean. And well, what's his metrics based on? Even like I even question his metrics. So yeah, maybe in the middle of summer and when the weather's nice, you can drive across the entire country. But if you try driving in cold weather, your charge rate is completely different than if you're driving in fair weather.
Like cut in half.
In some cases, yeah.
Yeah.
Some cases.
I remember just being in Ottawa with my phone, right? And like it just zaps the battery when it's cold. It's crazy.
So, well, I have friends that have Teslas, and one of my friends was telling me he was just, comes out of his house fully charged. His car's fully charged, gets out of his house, it's like minus 15 that day, and it says 40%. He's like, no, I know it's fully charged. Yeah. At home.
So he plugged it in.
Charged.
He plugged it in at home.
Yeah.
And
not to mention batteries degrade too over time. Like, so you have a battery that you drove right off the lot with your brand new car, and maybe it'll make it on a fair weather day across a fair weather week or whatever. It takes a long time to get across Canada, but it makes it across Canada by Guilbeault's standards, right? And well, you turn around, you try to go back. Say you stay there for a year, and then you turn around, try to come back. Well, your battery's degraded by X amount because things aren't new all the time, and cells give out, and they don't charge up right. And there's balancing methods that you can to balance these charges, but they give out. It's not going to be as good as it was on day one. So there's going to be all kinds of problems with this.
I think it's also worth mentioning too, when you are driving a long distance, you don't just fill up and you're done. Like, charging takes time. it adds hours and hours and hours to your trip. Like I find that surprising because no one ever told me about that until I had a friend with an electric car. He's like, yeah, I'm going to take a couple more hours. And I'm like, a couple more hours? He's like, yeah, I got to charge it. And I'm like, dang, I didn't even realize that, like no one told me.
Yeah, and it's got an elaborate map system inside the car that'll like tell you where the next charger is, and you should go to this one, like all that kind of info.
But
and how long it'll take.
It's I know you got to get going here. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we go on electric vehicles?
Well, I would like to advocate for because this would go against what the government wants, but I think diesel electric is the way of the future. I think that would be the best way and the best move forward. Now, there could be all kinds of cars that run around in cities and do their thing in short range trips, because it makes sense. You can plug it in. You don't even use a full charge in a day. You charge it once a week or that kind of thing. I have an electric bike. I drive that to work. Like that's I live like 3K from my house. It takes me 8 minutes. It's amazing, and so I'm pro electric, but I think we can find efficiency in bringing technologies together. Like having a diesel engine in a vehicle, it only like any engine runs at an optimum output in one particular RPM range and load range. And you're not gonna see the ultimate. You're not gonna see your best performance in a diesel engine when you're stopping and going. You'll see it at a particular RPM range and a particular load range. Like truck drivers will know this because they'll get the most bang out of the buck for their diesel that they can. But if you were to design a small, tiny little diesel engine that could ramp up and put a selected load on a generator to charge your electric batteries to drive your electric car, you probably get the most amount of people adopting this technology, and then because they'll get better returns because you'll save the most amount of money on fuel costs, and then you can plug it in as well. There's all these things, and then you won't have range anxiety. You have a lot of stuff. I think if we went the route of, locomotives have been doing diesel electric for generations. It's been a long time that they switched over to that, and that's definitely a way to go. And I see in the chat and nuclear, but that's the grid. When it comes to automotive application, I think diesel electric would be the best way to both, clean up the environment. You're not spewing like dirty stuff out of a tailpipe. The modern engines are pretty clean, and I'm not an alarmist. I don't dig the alarmism stuff. I think those people are environmental, and be concerned about the environment. Be concerned about that. But like the sky's not falling, Chicken Little. It isn't. And like you can look into this information, and a lot of good activists and not just activists, but scientists are coming out and rejecting the alarmism theory, like this whole idea that the world's going to end in a short order. The climate's changing, and we have some bits to do with it, but there's other factors, and we should just really be bracing for what happens next. It's Y2K. It feels like Y2K all over again. It's insane to me.
So you don't think I should be throwing cans of soup onto Van Gogh paintings in a museum? You don't think that's going to help?
That pissed me off, actually, a lot. You can see there's a painting behind me of Van Gogh. I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
It's crazy how ignorant it's gotten, right? Like this new form of activism.
It's ridiculous because at the end of the day, what it is people not listening to, it's the Church of Science, and we've seen it when it comes to the pandemic. It's happening with this climate change thing as well. The climate's changing, and it has changed for a long time. We're still in the Pleistocene Ice Age. And we've had warmer days, and we've had colder days with more CO2. It's a really interesting dynamic. I recommend people really look into how things actually work for people who are like, I don't know. I'm an empiricist, like I want empirical data for why it goes one way. And when other people come in and say, no, it doesn't work that way, and they're like well-renowned climatologists, and they're like, yeah, but this chiropractor came and told me that it's all going to end next week. And I'm like, well, let's look at the facts and weigh it in.
Some grade 7 blonde little girl told me the world's going to end. She's in grade 8. What about that, right?
Well, she's 18 now. We can make fun of her and not get in trouble. Greta,
yeah. We'll still get attacked. And actually, before we go back to the the journalism stuff and the news that you're doing, you were saying that there are people who try to intimidate you. There's a lot of haters that you get. What has that been like dealing with the trolls?
So I think I'm lucky because the opinion that I put out there is really open-ended, and I really don't tell people what to do, and I don't hold their hand and say you should have this ideology. You know what I mean? I do introduce in my live streams and talks about where I stand ideologically, and where I stand is really open-ended. Like somebody could come tomorrow and change my mind completely by showing me a better way. And I'd be happy to, if it turns out to be better, adopt that, because I'm more interested in the truth than I am interested in an ideological like my team, your team, that kind of thing. The versus game is just annoying for me. It's an aspect that I'd rather not deal with. I'd just rather deal with this. But there are people with those ideological bends, and they've attacked me in different ways, and I want to say I've been pretty lucky because I don't get it too bad. Like some people get it pretty bad, like pretty harsh. But I think it's because when you feed the trolls, they'll come at you more, and because I feel like I'm pretty decent at handling them. What's almost got me a number of times though is what people call concern trolls. And I'm sure you've seen it as well. And what concern trolls do is they come in and they're disingenuous. They'll say like, I was a fan of yours for so long, but then until you said this one thing and it really turned me against what you. Yeah. Like they're just trying to get you to walk back like a thing that you said or something like that, trying to get you to crack on what you believe in because of this, and I call it concern trolling. I get a lot of that. I get a bunch of those. I got a lot of that when I talked about Made, and that was
really.
Yeah. But people, I think a lot of the trolls could see that I was actually getting like pretty choked up about covering those stories. That
it's
they're
just
like, I'm gonna get them with that.
Mm-hmm. It's just too bad because even though maybe these people are maybe slightly more right-leaning or slightly more conservative, they're still exercising or pushing this sort of social silence, this kind of social pressure. Don't have that opinion. Don't have this opinion. You shouldn't say that because of. And it's I don't know. I think we got to continue to shake that as Canadians. I mean, in some cases maybe it's warranted, but it's I just feel like there's like a culture of silence and submission and control that's gone unchecked for a long time.
But you got to realize that it's on all sides too, right? So like you'll get together with people that are maybe more right leaning and they'll have a hard time accepting certain ideas. Cause
like
it's outside of their purview.
There might have been some people who said, I really liked what you were saying, Clyde, but you supported electric vehicles too much. You needed to wholesale just not like them at all. Something like that.
There might be some people out there that it's pick a team, man. You're on my team or you're on the other team. And I really want people to be able to make up those decisions for themselves and come to the conclusions that they come to, not because their team's doing a thing. Right. And I think that's what's wrong with our politicians in Canada or around the world right now is just this huge dichotomy of this or that. And then you've got the NDP, which latch onto another thing is kind of like a Bernie Sanders thing of like, the grocery stores are bad. We're gonna give everyone free stuff.
They got a new gimmick each week, it seems.
Yeah, it's all new gimmicks, and it's you really got to see through those gimmicks, and it's hard because it's easy to get caught up in it because we're social creatures and we always want to find our commonalities, and those are the things that distinguish us and build to our character, but they can often tear us down because they lump us into groups, and we need to really focus on being individuals here.
Absolutely. On that note, let's wrap it up. You can obviously find Clyde at youtube.com/@ClydeDoSomething. Is there anything else that you want to promote or talk about?
Oh, follow me on Twitter. I like having conversations on Twitter. It's really fun. I liken it to having a deep intellectual conversation with an angry chihuahua behind a chain link fence. It's such a fantastic place to hang out.
Yeah, that's a great description of Twitter. And there will be a chat that I have with Clyde on his channel as well. So you'll be able to get tune into that maybe tomorrow or
that'll be up tomorrow morning. Yeah. So check that out.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the stream, man. It's I'm looking forward to seeing you, continue to do your content and just kind of help Canadians be tethered to the correct or more accurate, I'll say, version of reality, so people can step out of the the legacy media prison, as I called it.
Thanks for putting me on the other side of this for once. I'm usually the one asking the questions.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
And
we'll be able to do it again sometime as well.
Yes. I look forward to having you on for a podcast, and we'll have like a long conversation about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, Clyde's doing long form podcasts, guys. Keep your eyes peeled. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting. Exciting time to be in alternative media in Canada, I gotta say. Yeah.
Until they shut us down. Well, we'll see.
Nah, not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. All right. Thanks for coming on, Clyde.